Welcome, music fans of the internet. I'm Kevin.
I'm Derek.
And together we are last week's album, where we're talking about good music. And before we get started with this album review, we'll start like we always do, drinking a beer. Cheers, Derek.
Cheers, Kevin. Cheers, everyone at home.
And today we're talking about a band called Close Talker.
Well, Kevin, you're invading mine and the internet space there.
And the name of the album is Flux. But enough of that nonsense. I'm talking about Flux by Close Talker. A little background on the band. They are from Saskatoon, which is in Saskatchewan, Canada. And I can't talk today. The band is made up of Will Queering on vocals guitar, Matthew Copperrood on guitar and vocals, Jeremy Olson on vocals and bass, and Chris Morian on vocals and drums. Flux is their sophomore album, following their acclaimed 2013 debut, Timbers, and it was recorded in just 3 short weeks, which is kind of rare in today's age. So, let's get into what it sounds like. Derek, what do you think?
Kevin, I think Flux sounds like Band of Horses and On, Drenched in the Light of the Aurora Borealis, or which might be Shoegaze in the Arctic Circle, or Snowshoegaze.
Snowshoegaze, inventing genres here at last week's album. I like it, Derek. I think this sounds like textured, atmospheric jams that bend and break like a polar tide. So together, I think we've got a lot of northern references, which kind of makes sense for this Canadian group. Let's get into key tracks. Derek, what did you pick?
Kevin, I'm going with opening track, Heads.
All right, well, I'm going to go with Blurring Days, but why don't you kick us off since yours comes first?
Yeah, it opens with this warm buzz that erupts into a fluid, descending bass guitar riff and pensive bass snare drum beat as whirring guitar riffs kind of float in the background. The verses feature sparser, crisp drum beat, descending bass guitar riff again, and this brooding vocal melody, something. Choruses feature splashes of electric guitar chords, booming anthemic group vocal melodies, and there's synth strings and a few other twists and turns in between. The lyrics kind of, from what I kind of gathered, it kind of talks about going, leaving loved ones at home and kind of having to go fulfill some sort of duty or something. At one point, and this is the group, they say, "We left our heads back at home, and don't forget the girls back at home." And at first, I thought he said, "We left our hats back at home." I was like, oh no, you lose like 80% of your body temperature off your head, and it's cold in Canada. Like seriously, I Google Maps Saskatoon, and you wouldn't believe how many times I had to zoom out till both our locations were in the same screen. So, but it wasn't that. But for anyone listening, remember, wear your hats in the winter.
And remember to wear your head. Also important. That is a great track, Derek. However, for my key track, I'm going with Blurring Days. I chose it because it has some awesome percussion that just grabbed me right from the start. These echoing snare hits right off the bat. There's whirring synth, humming bass, staccato rhythm guitar, and these skitchy like shimmers on lead guitar. Some saxophone stabs, which is a nice little touch. And the vocals sort of blur from these subdued, chill verses to these falsetto whispers in the chorus. There's subtle electric effects over these more organic vocals and acoustic guitar. They do some group vocals again here, like Derek mentioned, and that's something they do a lot, which is a nice touch and kind of cool for all 4 of them to sing together. And a scorching electric guitar in the background. Just a great rhythm-led track that you really can't help but bob your head and tap your foot to. So definitely check out Heads and Blurring Days. Let's talk about the best lyrics. Derek, what do you think?
Mine is coming from Heads, and it's not talking about hats or leaving anything at home. But he says, "I was unaware, expecting desire, swim up for air and back to the bottom. Feels like the ocean is tired, laying me down hour by hour." Just a lot of the vivid imagery they used here, I kind of dug. Although I was still like, man, I hope he had his hat, the whole time.
We can only hope, Derek. We can only hope. For my best lyric, I'm going with one from The Silence 2, and the line goes, "Not gonna break it down, it's all been done before. the feeling it was had, the silence has an end. And I thought this was a great example of their sort of mysterious, nebulous lyrics that are very open to interpretation and sort of describes their ethereal sound that feels familiar but also kind of breaks some new ground at times. So there you have it on Best Lyrics. Coming down to overall rating, Derek, what are you giving it?
Kevin, I'm giving Flux a 4 out of 5. I thought this was really solid throughout. I think as we kind of touched on a lot here, the textures that they achieve are really fascinating. You know, there's a lot of intermoving parts, and just the way they ebb and flow is really enthralling. Really, just draws you in. I like what you said about some things being familiar. But I think they have enough of their own unique sound, where they kind of took some things and were like, oh, okay, that kind of sounds like this or that, but then they kind of shift or bring in a whole new part that really kind of goes in their own direction. And overall, I thought the instrumentation was just very solid. From a production standpoint, I mean, I thought it was all gelled really well. So giving it a 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed it.
All right, we are in agreement, Derek. I'm also going to give this one a 4 out of 5. Like you mentioned, a lot of textures. That is a word I kept coming back to when trying to describe this album. They do it with instruments, they do it with songs, they do it with vocals. And as you mentioned, just when you sort of think you've pinned down their sound or you think they sound like something, they shift gears and really make it their own, which is really, really nice. From group chants to instrumental dropouts to growing crescendos, there's all these dynamics built into each song that really keep you listening and interested and intrigued from track to track. I thought the percussion was the highlight of the album. Lots of fun drums and beats all over the place, and changing beats even sometimes, which is really cool. They had some orchestral flourishes with elements like xylophones and strings and sax that I mentioned, which also give them their unique take on this sort of indie rock genre. So my only critique would be maybe it's a little too polished. Could have felt a little bit raw and more, I don't know, real and emotional and immediate. But overall, a great, great sophomore album from a very good up-and-coming group. So there you have it, guys. 4 out of 5 from both Derek and I makes it an 8 out of 10. Means you should definitely check out Flux by Close Talker. I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube. You can find us on all the other social media. And as always, I'm Kevin.
I'm Derek.
And we're last week's album, talking about good music. See you next time, guys.